Picture yourself curled up in a drafty corner of a Norman castle, circa 1200 CE, the air thick with the scent of damp stone, tallow, and the faint whiff of a guard's unwashed tunic. The midnight bell tolls, and a creaky bolt slams shut, echoing through the keep like a giant saying, "Nobody's getting in or out." Medieval castles across Europe, from England's Dover to France's Carcassonne, locked their doors at midnight, not just for safety, but for reasons steeped in fear, superstition, and better safe than sorry. These fortresses were less cozy homes and more paranoid strongholds, their inhabitants bolting gates against bandits, ghosts, and the occasional wayward cow. We're not here to spook you silly, that's for campfire tales, but to chuckle at their jittery lockup rituals, wrapped in the hum of a creaky castle night. So fluff your imaginary cloak, ignore the distant howl of something unsettling, and let the rustle of chainmail, the flicker of a torch, and their nervous mutterings lull you into a cozy, amused snooze. We're diving into 10 reasons why medieval castles barred their doors at midnight, each a peek into the cautious, quirky world of lords, guards, and sleepless serfs. From foggy English moors to torchlit French halls, we'll wander through their locked-down lives, savoring the scent of wax, the clank of iron bolts, and the sheer audacity of fearing both invaders and phantoms. These lockdowns were a mix of strategy, dread, and hope the devil's not knocking. Grab a mental mug of ale, settle in, and let's giggle our way through the midnight fears of medieval castles, each one a sleepy, snarky gem. Imagine huddling by a flickering fire in an English castle, 1150 CE, the air heavy with the scent of wood smoke, wool, and the faint whiff of a guard's spilled ale. A distant rustle makes everyone jump as the midnight bolt slams shut to keep bandits at bay. The air's buzzing with the clank of chainmail, the creak of wood, and the murmur of "check the gate." Chronicles like those of Orderic Vitalis describe roving bandits striking castles at night, making midnight lockdowns a must. Let's slip into this tense nightscape, letting the flicker of a torch, the whiff of wax, and their nervous watch make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Bandits, per medieval records, loved the cover of darkness to raid poorly guarded castles. A gang might sneak over a wall, eyeing silver or livestock, the air thick with the rustle of cloaks and the smell of mud. Guards, bolting doors, probably muttered, "Hope those thieves trip in the moat." Midnight was prime raid time, the air tense with the clank of bolts and the hope of a quiet night. Life around this was nervy. Castles buzzed with tales of night raids, the air heavy with the clink of swords and the scent of tallow. Watchmen, patrolling walls, grumbled about bandits, their voices gruff, the air warm with the creak of gates and the effort of staying alert. Servants, sharing bread, whispered about that gang in the woods, the air thick with the smell of ale and the murmur of "lock it tight." The community loved the drama, snickering over stew about a thief's moat splash, the air thick with fumes, and the kind of laughter you get when danger's outside. Bandits were a scare, and as the fire fades, let's shift to sieges, where enemies got bold. Picture yourself perched on a French castle's battlements, 1250 CE, the air heavy with the scent of pitch, stone, and the faint whiff of a night's sweaty gambeson. The midnight bolt clanks shut, as rumors of an enemy army keep everyone on edge. The air's buzzing with the clink of armor, the rustle of banners, and the distant howl of a wolf. Chronicles like those of Matthew Paris Note castles locking down to brace for sieges with midnight the hour enemies might strike. Let's saunter into this warlike tension, letting the flicker of a torch, the whiff of tar, and their anxious watch make you snicker as you sink toward slumber. Sieges, per medieval accounts, often started at night, with armies testing walls under cover of darkness. A creaky gate could mean disaster, the air thick with the drone of prayers and the smell of wax. Castellan, checking bolts, probably muttered, "Hope that army's lost in the fog." Locking at midnight was a ritual, the air tense with the clank of iron and the hope of holding the fort. Life around this was grim. Castles hummed with siege prep, the air heavy with the clink of weapons and the scent of pitch. Knights, sharpening swords, grumbled about enemies, their voices tense, the air warm with the creak of drawbridges and the effort of staying ready. Servants, hauling supplies, whispered about that army nearby, the air thick with the smell of bread and the murmur of bolt the gate. The community dreaded the threat, snickering nervously over ale about a scout's bad map, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when war's at the door. Sieges were a terror, and as the battlements fade, let's shift to ghosts, where spirits got spooky. Imagine curling up in a Welsh castle's hall, 1300 CE, the air heavy with the scent of damp stone, tallow, and the faint whiff of a servant's moldy bread. The midnight bolt slams shut, as tales of restless spirits make everyone jump at shadows. The air's buzzing with the clink of rosaries, the rustle of cloaks, and the murmur of "Did you hear that?" Folklore, like the Mabinogian and Chronicles, note medieval fears of ghosts haunting castles at night. Let's dive into this spooky chaos, letting the flicker of a candle, the whiff of wax, and their ghostly jitters make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Ghosts, per medieval tales, wandered at midnight, from slain knights to wronged maids. A creaky floorboard might mean a specter, the air thick with the drone of prayers and the smell of incense. Guards locking doors probably muttered, "Hope that ghost stays outside." Midnight was spirit hour, the air tense with the rustle of linen and the hope of a peaceful night. Life around this was eerie. Castles buzzed with ghost stories, the air heavy with the clink of amulets and the scent of tallow. Priests, sprinkling holy water, warned of spirits, their voices stern, the air warm with the chant of psalms and the effort of banishing ghosts. Servants, sharing stew, whispered about that haunted tower, the air thick with the smell of ale and the murmur of "Lock it tight." Community loved the fright, snickering over bread about a ghost's bad haunt, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when spirits roam. Ghosts were a scare, and as the hall fades, let's shift to curfews, where rules got strict. Picture yourself in a German castle's courtyard, 1350 CE, the air heavy with the scent of straw, iron, and the faint whiff of a cook's burnt stew. The midnight bell tolls, and a bolt clanks shut, enforcing a curfew to keep everyone in line. The air's buzzing with the clink of keys, the rustle of cloaks, and the grumble of time for bed. Castle records, like those from Nuremberg, show curfews locking doors to maintain order. Let's wander into this rigid nightscape, letting the flicker of a torch, the whiff of wax, and their strict rules make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Curfews, per medieval logs, controlled servants and guests, with midnight marking lights out. A loose bolt could mean chaos, say, a drunk squire wandering off, the air thick with the drone of orders and the smell of straw. Stewards locking gates probably muttered, "Hope nobody's sneaking out." Midnight was discipline time, the air tense with the clank of locks and the hope of a quiet castle. Life around this was strict. Castles hummed with curfew talk, the air heavy with the clink of chains and the scent of tallow. Guards enforcing rules grumbled about stragglers, their voices gruff, the air warm with the creak of doors and the effort of keeping order. Servants sharing bread whispered about that locked gate, the air thick with the smell of ale and the murmur of "don't be late." The community tolerated the rules, snickering over stew about a squire's curfew slip, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when midnight's a deadline. Curfews were a drag, and as the courtyard fades, let's shift to spies, where secrets got sneaky. Imagine huddling in a Scottish castle's tower, 1400 CE, the air heavy with the scent of peat, wool, and the faint whiff of a spy's damp cloak. The midnight bolt slams shut, as rumors of a traitor inside keep everyone jumpy. The air's buzzing with the clink of daggers, the rustle of parchment, and the murmur of "who's the mole?" Chronicles, like those of Froissart, note castles locking down to thwart spies or turncoats. Let's slip into this sneaky chaos, letting the flicker of a candle, the whiff of ink, and their paranoid whispers make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Spies, per medieval accounts, slip through gates to steal plans or open doors for enemies. A creaky hinge could mean betrayal, the air thick with the drone of suspicions and the smell of wax. Guards bolting doors probably muttered, "Hope that spies stuck outside." Midnight was danger hour, the air tense with the rustle of cloaks and the hope of loyalty. Life around this was tense. Castles buzzed with spy talk, the air heavy with the clink of swords and the scent of tallow. Lords checking allies grumbled about traitors, their voices low, the air warm with the rustle of letters and the effort of sniffing out sneaks. Servants sharing stew whispered about that shady guest, the air thick with the smell of ale and the murmur of "lock it tight." The community loved the intrigue, snickering over bread about a spy's bad disguise, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when betrayal's afoot. Spies were a scare, and as the tower fades, let's shift to superstition, where demons got creepy. Picture yourself in an Italian castle's chapel, 1280 CE, the air heavy with the scent of incense, wax, and the faint whiff of a monk's damp robe. The midnight bolt clanks shut, as fears of demons prowling the night make everyone clutch their rosaries. The air's buzzing with the clink of beads, the rustle of linen, and the chant of "keep Satan out." Sermons like those of Bernard of Clairvaux warn of demons active at midnight, urging castles to lock up tight. Let's dive into this spooky superstition, letting the flicker of a candle, the whiff of myrrh, and their demonic dread make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Demons, per medieval lore, roamed at midnight, seeking souls or causing mischief. A loose gate might invite a devil, the air thick with the drone of prayers and the smell of incense. Priests, blessing bolts, probably muttered, "Hope Satan's not knocking." Midnight was witching hour, the air tense with the rustle of robes and the hope of divine protection. Life around this was eerie. Castles hummed with demon talk, the air heavy with the clink of amulets and the scent of wax. Monks, sprinkling holy water, warned of evil, their voices stern, the air warm with the chant of psalms and the effort of banishing spirits. Servants, sharing bread, whispered about that midnight devil, the air thick with the smell of ale and the murmur of "lock it tight." The community loved the fright, snickering over stew about a demon's bad knock, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when hell's at the gate. Demons were a terror, and as the chapel fades, let's shift to animals where strays got troublesome. Imagine sprawling in an English castle's bailey, 1320 CE, the air heavy with the scent of straw, mud, and the faint whiff of a cow's untimely moo. The midnight bolt slams shut, keeping wandering livestock from causing a ruckus. The air's buzzing with the clink of bells, the rustle of grass, and the grumble of "not again." Castle records like those from York note animals sneaking into grounds, prompting strict lockdowns. Let's wander into this pastoral chaos, letting the flicker of a torch, the whiff of manure, and their bovine bothers make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. Stray animals, per medieval logs, wandered into castles, trampling gardens, or spooking guards. A cow at the gate could mean chaos, the air thick with the moo of trouble and the smell of mud. Keepers locking doors probably muttered, "Hope that cow doesn't charge." Midnight was animal hour, the air tense with the rustle of straw and the hope of a quiet yard. Life around this was messy. Castles buzzed with animal complaints, the air heavy with the clink of buckets and the scent of tallow. Herdsmen, chasing strays, grumbled about open gates, their voices gruff, the air warm with the creak of pens and the effort of corralling cows. Servants, sharing stew, whispered about that rogue pig, the air thick with the smell of ale and the murmur of "lock the barn." The community loved the absurdity, snickering over bread about a cow's castle crash, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when livestock runs the night. Animals were a nuisance, and as the bailey fades, let's shift to servants, where mischief got locked out. Picture yourself in a French castle's kitchen, 1370 CE, the air heavy with the scent of bread, grease, and the faint whiff of a servant's spilled wine. The midnight bolt clanks shut, stopping servants from sneaking out for a tavern romp. The air's buzzing with the clink of pots, the rustle of aprons, and the murmur of "caught again." Household records like those from Paris show castles locking doors to curb servant shenanigans. Let's slip into this cheeky chaos, letting the flicker of a fire, the whiff of dough, and their sneaky plans make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Servants, per medieval logs, loved slipping out for drinks or trysts, but midnight lockdowns kept them in. A creaky gate might mean a maid's escape, the air thick with the giggle of mischief and the smell of wax. Stewards bolting doors probably muttered, "Hope that cook's not at the tavern." Midnight was mischief hour, the air tense with the rustle of cloaks and the hope of good behavior. Life around this was lively. Castles hummed with servant gossip, the air heavy with the clink of keys and the scent of bread. Overseers, checking beds, grumbled about runaways, their voices stern, the air warm with the creak of doors and the effort of keeping order. Servants, sharing ale, whispered about that locked gate, the air thick with the smell of stew and the murmur of "try tomorrow." The community loved the antics, snickering over bread about a maid's bad sneak, the air thick with fumes, and the kind of laughter you get when servants dodge the bolt. Mischief was a game, and as the kitchen fades, let's shift to plague fears, where disease got scary. Imagine huddling in a Spanish castle's hall, 1348 CE, the air heavy with the scent of herbs, wax, and the faint whiff of a physician's vinegar-soaked cloth. The midnight bolt slams shut, keeping plague-ridden travelers out. The air's buzzing with the clink of amulets, the rustle of cloaks, and the murmur of stay healthy. Chronicles, like those of Jean de Venette, note castles locking down during the Black Death to avoid disease. Let's dive into this grim paranoia, letting the flicker of a candle, the whiff of vinegar, and their plague panic make you chuckle as you drift toward sleep. The Black Death, per records, made castles fortresses against disease. A stranger at midnight might carry plague, the air thick with the drone of prayers and the smell of herbs. Guards bolting gates probably muttered, "Hope that cough's just a cold." Midnight was danger hour, the air tense with the rustle of linen and the hope of staying alive. Life around this was bleak. Castles buzzed with plague talk, the air heavy with the clink of rosaries and the scent of vinegar. Physicians burning herbs warned of disease, their voices grim, the air warm with the chant of prayers and the effort of warding off death. Servants, sharing bread, whispered about that sick traveler, the air thick with the smell of ale and the murmur of "lock it tight." The community dreaded the pestilence, snickering nervously over stew about a guard's bad cough, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when death's outside. Plague was a terror, and as the hall fades, let's shift to religious rituals, where midnight got holy. Picture yourself in an English castle's chapel, 1450 CE, the air heavy with the scent of incense, wax, and the faint whiff of a monk's damp sandals. The midnight bolt clanks shut as monks chant to protect the castle from divine wrath. The air's buzzing with the clink of censers, the rustle of robes, and the chant of "Save our souls." Church records, like those from Canterbury, note midnight prayers sealing castles with holy protection. Let's wander into this sacred lockdown, letting the flicker of a candle, the whiff of myrrh, and their pious chants make you chuckle as you sink toward slumber. Midnight prayers per medieval liturgies warded off evil, with chants like Salve Regina blessing the bolts. A loose gate might invite divine anger, the air thick with the drone of hymns and the smell of incense. Monks locking doors probably muttered, "Hope God likes our singing." Midnight was holy hour, the air tense with the rustle of parchment and the hope of salvation. Life around this was devout. Castles hummed with prayer talk, the air heavy with the clink of rosaries and the scent of wax. Priests, swinging censers, urged piety, their voices loud, the air warm with the chant of psalms and the effort of pleasing God. Servants, sharing bread, whispered about those midnight chants, the air thick with the smell of ale and the murmur of "Lock it holy." The community loved the ritual, snickering over stew about a monk's off-key hymn, the air thick with fumes and the kind of laughter you get when prayers seal the night. Rituals were a duty, and as the chapel fades, let's wrap up with a final reflection, tying these lockdowns together with a smirk. When we think about the midnight bolt sliding home in a medieval castle, it feels like an artifact of a vanished world. Stone walls, iron hinges, flickering torches, whispers of spirits. Yet in many ways our modern world hums with the same ritual of locking, guarding, and fearing the night. The tools have changed. Our fobs instead of drawbridges, CCTV cameras instead of torchlight, but the impulse is ancient, a human desire to declare the day finished, the household protected, the chaos of the outside world firmly shut away. where a medieval guard muttered prayers as he swung a heavy beam across a gate. Today, a security guard swipes his ID, checks a blinking keypad, and says nothing at all, but the act is the same. Close the world out so sleep may begin. Consider our neighborhoods. A castle's curfew bell has become the soft hum of motion sensor lights outside suburban homes, or the quiet chime of a digital alarm system arming itself. Families today double-check locks, pull curtains, and flick off porch lamps, just as castle households once whispered prayers, banked fires, and secured bolts. Even the communal element remains. Neighborhoods establish watch groups, much like medieval villagers stationed men to patrol walls. We text a neighbor if a stranger lingers near a driveway. In 1250, the warning would have been a shout from the battlements. The technologies differ, but the psychology, the shared responsibility for the community's safety, remains unchanged. Corporate campuses, too, are modern castles. Step into a high-rise office tower at midnight, and you'll see badge-only access, turnstiles that lock down after hours, cameras panning across darkened lobbies. These measures echo the drawbridges raised and portcullises dropped to secure medieval strongholds. Just as servants and squires were forbidden from slipping out after curfew, today employees can't simply wander into a data center at 2 a.m. The rules are strict, the doors sealed, and the sense of order is enforced by electronic locks rather than iron ones. In both ages, the message is identical. Night belongs not to freedom, but to control. Hospitals, airports, and even schools replicate the same layered defense. Hospitals restrict access to wards after visiting hours, requiring buzz-ins like castles required verbal challenges. Airports, sprawling complexes with outer gates, inner halls, and secure zones operate much like concentric castle defenses. The outer wall, the bailey, that keep each checkpoint, narrowing who may enter. And schools, particularly in the wake of modern fears, conduct lockdown drills eerily reminiscent of medieval households, sealing themselves in during plague years or bandit scares. We may call them security protocols, but they are really rituals of fear management, designed to make chaotic threats feel containable. The religious element has shifted, but not vanished. Medieval monks sealed the night with chants, believing words could protect walls. Today, we rely on passwords, encryption, and code spoken or typed formulas that guard invisible gates. A 12-digit password functions like a rosary, repeated and reinforced, a barrier against unseen forces. For medieval minds, demons prowled the dark. For us, hackers and malware do the same. Both require invisible shields, whether blessed bolts or firewalls, both imbued with a kind of mystical faith. You can't see what they stop, only trust that they work. Even our personal routines echo the castle's nightly lockup. Many people have bedtime rituals that mirror medieval prayers and chores, checking that the stove is off, the doors are locked, the phone is on silent. These rituals quiet the mind as much as they secure the home. A medieval family might have whispered the Salve Regina before lying on straw pallets. We scroll through notifications one last time, swipe airplane mode, and set alarms. Both serve as signals to the brain. The world outside is closed, you are safe, it's time to rest. The echoes are clearest in times of crisis. During the COVID-19 pandemic, cities across the globe imposed curfews, echoing medieval towns shutting gates at night to stave off plague. In 1348, a Spanish castle barred strangers at midnight. In 2020, cities told citizens to stay indoors by sundown. The logic was the same. Invisible threats moved with people, so movement had to stop. The lockdowns, both then and now, combined practicality with superstition, herbs and vinegar in the Middle Ages, masks and sanitizers in ours. And just as castle servants joked nervously about a guard's cough, neighbors today exchanged memes about toilet paper shortages, laughter softening the edge of dread. Animals, too, still shape our locks. Where medieval castles barred gates to keep cows from wandering in, modern suburbs fence yards against raccoons, coyotes, or stray dogs. Farmers install electric fences, not portcullises, but the principle endures. The line between wilderness and household must be reinforced each night. A cow's midnight moo in 1320 has become the crash of a trash can lid in 2025, both reminders that creatures don't respect human curfews. And both inspire the same muttered grumble. Not again. The paranoia about insiders, traitors in the castle, spies at the gate translates seamlessly into modern corporate and political life. Today, companies worry less about a servant opening a gate and more about an employee leaking data. Insider threats, studied in cybersecurity, mirror medieval anxieties about betrayal. Gates, passwords, and surveillance cameras are all attempts to neutralize that gnawing fear that danger might already be inside. When a medieval steward muttered about a shady guest, he anticipated the manager today, wondering if an intern is siphoning client lists onto a USB stick. The human fear is constant. Not the enemy at the wall, but the one inside it. And then there's the folklore. Ghosts haunted medieval castles, demons prowled the night, and people locked doors as much against the unseen as the seen. Today, our ghosts have shifted forms. They are the horror stories of urban crime, the chilling news reports, the whispered tales of burglaries or home invasions that ripple through communities. We know rationally that locking a deadbolt won't stop every danger, but like a medieval rosary, it soothes the nerves. Folklore persists in the form of urban legends, true crime podcasts, and the deep, irrational comfort of clicking a lock 3 times before bed. The ghost may have changed, but the ritual remains. Technology has added convenience, but not removed the need. Smart locks, video doorbells, and biometric scanners give us the illusion of mastery. Yet the nightly ritual of sealing ourselves away is the same. Some even set locks to engage automatically at midnight, as if echoing the tolling of a medieval bell. Our homes are castles, our passwords portcullises, our routines a curfew. The wolf outside is now a hacker, a virus, a stranger in the night, but the psychology, the deep human craving for closure, safety, and ritual has not shifted in 1,000 years. So while medieval bolts seem quaint, they are really ancestors of our own digital and physical locks. We still fear intruders, enforce order at night, worry about disease, gossip about betrayal, and cling to rituals that make the dark feel less threatening. Castles may crumble, but the impulse to declare the day over, to say nobody's getting in or out, lingers in every code, every gate, every bedtime check. The world is wider now, but the night is still the night, and we, like our medieval forebears, still lock it away with a shudder and a sigh of relief. As the hum of the castle fades, the clank of iron bolts, the rustle of cloaks, the scent of wax and slightly sour ale, let your mind flop into the quiet like a guard after a long night of watch. We've wandered through the reasons medieval castles locked their doors at midnight, from bandit raids to holy chants, each a testament to their paranoid, quirky world. Their nights were a whirlwind of spies, ghosts, and "is that cow at the gate again?" Yet they were also a place where bolts and prayers kept fears at bay. Picture yourself now tucked into a soft bed, the air still and the chaos of their fortress far away, their nervous lockdowns a distant chuckle. These castles, grim and cautious, remind us that even in history's most fortified corners, people were gloriously, messily human. Let the details slip away, like a torch flickering out in a drafty keep. The smoky halls, the creaky gates, the taste of ale and fear-soaked air, they fade into the background, leaving only the peace of this moment and a lingering smirk. You've journeyed through a world where midnight meant lock up, its guards' wary glances and monks' earnest chants, keeping its story alive. Now it's time to rest, to let go of the medieval antics and sink into calm. Close your eyes, if you haven't already, and let the gentle absurdity of history lull you into sleep, safe in the silliness of now.